They fired me live on the investor call. Actually, let me back up. I'm Aaron Mitchell, 47 years old, and until last Tuesday, I was the Senior Regulatory Affairs Director at NexGen Dynamics here in Phoenix. 15 years with the company, Navy veteran before that. I'm the guy who makes sure we don't get sued into oblivion, which apparently makes me the office killjoy. Navy taught me patience, taught me systems thinking. In the service, you learn that every procedure exists for a reason, usually because someone died when it wasn't followed. 15 years on submarines where a misread gauge or skipped checklist could kill everyone aboard. That's where I learned to read the fine print, double-check the paperwork, trust, but verify everything. The corporate world thinks it's high stakes until you've been 400 feet underwater with 150 guys depending on everyone doing their job exactly right. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and desperation that morning. Gray Arizona sky outside, the kind that makes you think the world's running on low batteries. I was sitting in my usual spot, back corner, away from the mahogany table where our new director of digital innovation held court like she owned the place. Diana Rodriguez, 29 years old, Harvard MBA, been with us all of 8 months, wore designer suits that probably cost more than my truck payment and spoke in buzzwords like they were holy scripture. She was making triple my salary to present strategies I'd essentially written the compliance framework for. If you're wondering why I remember all this so clearly, it's because some moments burn themselves into your brain. This was one of those moments. We're looking at a quantum leap in market penetration, Diana announced, slapping her tablet against the whiteboard. She had the energy of someone who'd mainlined Red Bull and LinkedIn motivational posts. The rollout of our Apex validation system with Sterling Financial is going to revolutionize fintech compliance. We're talking $280 million in contracted revenue, people. The IP portfolio is completely locked down. That's when my eye twitched. Just a little. Professional reflex. In the Navy, we called it the pucker factor, that moment when your body knows something's wrong before your brain catches up. I cleared my throat. In the dead quiet of that boardroom, it sounded like a gunshot. Diana, quick clarification on the IP lockdown. She stopped mid-gesture and looked at me like I was a printer that had just jammed during an important presentation. Aaron, we're in flow state here. Can we table the nitpicks? See, here's what Diana didn't understand about the difference between nitpicks and catastrophes. On a submarine, there's no such thing as a small leak. Water doesn't care about your timeline or your flow state. It just keeps coming until you fix it or you drown. It's not a nitpick, I said, adjusting my glasses. You listed the blockchain validation architecture as fully owned proprietary assets, but Patent 7845 has a pending flag in our internal system. The assignment chain isn't complete. The room went quiet. Roger Palmer, our CEO, a man with the backbone of overcooked pasta, looked up from his phone for the first time all meeting. The junior VPs who'd been nodding along to Diana's presentation suddenly found their notebooks very interesting. Aaron, Diana sighed like a parent dealing with a difficult child. Legal cleared everything. Sterling's ready to sign. Stop looking for problems where there are only solutions. You're killing the momentum. I'm not trying to kill momentum. I'm trying to prevent us from committing contract fraud. Patent 7845 is the foundation of this entire deal. If the ownership chain isn't clean, Sterling can freeze everything. Now let me pause here and explain something about patent law because it's going to matter. Patent law is boring, soul-crushingly boring. It's a world where misplaced commas change the fate of millions, where filing dates matter down to the millisecond. It's a world where close enough means complete legal failure. People like Diana think big picture. They think details sort themselves out. They think because they're directors of innovation, the universe bends to their will. But the universe doesn't care about your job title. The universe cares about paperwork. Diana laughed. Sharp, dismissive. She looked around the table, inviting others to join in. A couple junior VPs chuckled nervously, trying to pick the right side. Karen from marketing gave this awful fake laugh that sounded like a dying goose. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Diana said, turning her back to me. Legacy thinking. We're a rocket ship, Aaron. You're checking tire pressure while we're breaking atmosphere. I felt heat rise up my neck. Not embarrassment. Anger. The cold, hard anger of a guy who knows how the machine actually works being lectured by someone who just likes pushing buttons. It's the same anger I felt watching fresh ensigns try to hotshot their way through procedures that existed because people had died learning them the hard way. The meeting dragged on another hour. I didn't speak again. I just took notes. Detailed, time-stamped notes. Every promise Diana made, every risk she waved away, every regulation she called legacy friction. Military habit. Document everything. CYA isn't just corporate speak, it's survival. At the end, as people shuffled papers and checked their phones, Diana clapped her hands. One last item, housekeeping. She turned her gaze directly to me. There was a gleam in her eye, malicious and calculating. She wasn't just annoyed by my interruption, she was offended by my existence. I was a relic of the old guard, a speed bump on her highway to the C-suite. In her world, experience wasn't an asset, it was dead weight. "We've been reviewing discretionary budget allocations," Diana said, loud enough for the hallway to hear, "and we're pivoting our compensation strategy toward growth mindsets. Unfortunately, Aaron, based on your performance today and the resistance you've shown this quarter, we're canceling your annual raise. Bonus is off the table too." The silence that followed was different. This wasn't awkward, it was horrified. Publicly stripping a 15-year veteran of his bonus in front of the entire leadership team. It was a power move so aggressive it bordered on sociopathic. "We need team players," Diana continued, smiling that shark smile. "Not anchors. Maybe this will motivate you to embrace the vision." Roger said nothing, just traced circles on his notepad with his pen. The other executives suddenly developed intense fascination with their coffee cups. Nobody was going to stand up for the old Navy guy. Corporate courage is an oxymoron. I felt the blood drain from my face. 15 years. I'd missed my son's baseball championships for this company, worked through the flu, through my divorce, through my dad's funeral. Making sure their compliance was clean, their procedures were solid, their assets were protected. And this woman, this suit full of ambition and spreadsheets, was taking it all away because I dared to point out a filing error. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't flip the table. That's what they expected. They expected the emotional veteran reaction. The old guy losing it, the same way fresh officers expected grizzled chiefs to explode when their authority was questioned. Instead, I stood up, capped my pen with a decisive click, gathered my notebook and tablet, military bearing, spine straight, movements controlled. "Understood," I said, my voice steady, terrifyingly steady. Diana blinked. She looked disappointed she didn't get a scene. Probably had a whole speech prepared about how outbursts proved her point about legacy thinking. "Good. Glad we're clear." "Crystal," I said. I walked out of that conference room, my footsteps clicking a steady beat on the industrial carpet. Click, click, click. It sounded like a countdown, because it was. They thought they'd broken me, put the old Navy guy in his place. I could hear them laughing as the door closed. Karen from marketing was already making some joke about generational differences in communication styles. These people had no idea what they'd just unleashed. What they didn't know, what Diana and her infinite arrogance hadn't bothered to check, and what Roger was too checked out to remember, was the specific history of Patent 7845. Diana was right about one thing. It was the backbone of the $280 million deal. But she was wrong about who owned it. She thought it was company property. I knew for a fact it wasn't, because I wrote it, and I knew exactly where the bodies were buried because I was the one holding the shovel. My cubicle was in the compliance wing, which is corporate speak for the corner where they stick people who do actual work. It hummed with server fans and smelled like ozone from overheating electronics. I liked it here. Reality existed here far from the glass offices where people like Diana ideated and synergized. The algorithm I'd written was elegant in its simplicity. Most blockchain validation systems bog down under high transaction volume, like trying to push freight trains through subway tunnels. Mine used predictive load balancing, anticipating traffic spikes before they happened. It could process 50,000 transactions per second, while competitors struggled with 5,000. The kind of breakthrough that happens when you understand both the technical requirements and the regulatory framework they have to operate within. I sat in my ergonomic chair, the one I bought myself because company-issued furniture is designed to slowly destroy your spine, and put my hands flat on the desk. My breathing was shallow, heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to break out. But my mind was cooling down, freezing into absolute clarity. Same thing happened before every submarine patrol, the moment when training kicked in and everything became procedure. I pulled up the digital record for patent 7845. The system lagged, spinning wheel of death mocking me, before the file appeared. Title: Distributed Blockchain Validation Protocol for High-Volume Financial Transactions. Inventor: Aaron Mitchell. Assignment: pending. There it was. That beautiful, terrible word. Pending. I closed my eyes and let the memory wash over me. 3 years ago. Middle of my divorce. Sarah, my ex, was taking me for everything, including half my pension. I was living in a studio apartment, working nights and weekends to keep from drowning in lawyer fees and child support. The company was struggling with latency issues in their fintech platform. Engineering was stumped. The innovation team was panicking. Diana's predecessor, a guy named Brad who got fired for sexual harassment, was throwing money at consultants who kept delivering theoretical solutions that crashed under real-world conditions. So I did what I always do. I fixed it. I wasn't an engineer by trade, but I understood the logic. Knew the regulatory requirements better than anyone in the building. I wrote that algorithm myself at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, fueled by gas station coffee and the kind of insomnia that comes from staring at divorce papers. The inspiration came from submarine sonar arrays, distributed processing where each node anticipates what its neighbors need before they ask for it. Apply that concept to financial transactions, and you get a system that scales exponentially instead of hitting walls. I filed the provisional patent myself, listed myself as inventor because technically I was. Did it from my apartment on my personal laptop, using my personal credit card to pay the filing fees. Standard procedure was for legal to send me assignment papers within 90 days. I'd sign them, transferring ownership to the company in exchange for usually nothing. Maybe a thank you email and a $25 gift card to Applebee's, corporate appreciation at its finest. But 3 years ago, legal was chaos. The old general counsel got fired for embezzlement. Turned out he'd been billing personal vacations as client development. Files were lost, emails deleted. The assignment papers for patent 7845 never came. I remembered waiting for them, checking my inbox daily for 2 weeks. Then I remembered the day I stopped checking. Figured it was their job to secure their assets. I was just the compliance guy, not their personal secretary. If they'd treated me right, given me respect, decent pay, basic acknowledgement, I would have walked into Roger's office years ago and said, "Hey, we missed some paperwork here." I would have fixed it because that's what I do. I fix things. I solve problems. I make sure the ship doesn't sink. But they never gave me credit. Every improvement I suggested got repackaged by someone else and presented as innovation. Every crisis I prevented went unnoticed because prevention is invisible. You only notice compliance when it fails. I looked at the screen. Patent had been granted 2 years ago. But without assignment papers, rights remained with the inventor. Me. I owned the algorithm. I owned the code that ran the Apex validation system. I owned the engine of Diana's rocket ship. I felt a smile tug at my mouth. Wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf realizing the sheep forgot to lock the gate. I reached for my phone. Didn't call a lawyer. Not yet. First, I needed to lock the door from the outside. In submarine warfare, you don't just fire torpedoes, you set up the attack pattern first. I opened a new email. Subject: Routine IP Documentation Review. Didn't send it to Diana. Didn't send it to Roger. That would have been amateur hour. I typed in the email address of Patrick Walsh, Chief Compliance Officer at Sterling Financial. We'd met at industry conferences over the years, bonded over shared hatred of buzzwords and love of properly organized documentation. Patrick was old school like me, believed in doing things right the first time because fixing them later cost 10 times as much. I typed slowly. Hi, Patrick. Just doing routine housekeeping before final signature. Can you confirm what chain of title documentation you have on file for the 7845 patent family? Our new director seems confident everything's automated, but you know how I worry about details. Best, Aaron. Innocent, helpful, the kind of email a diligent compliance director sends. But to someone like Patrick, it was a fire alarm. A coded message saying, check your records, something's wrong. In the Navy, we called it a heads up. Advance warning that let your allies prepare for incoming trouble. Hit send. Then I minimized the window and went back to work. Had audits to complete, compliance checks to run. I was going to be the perfect employee, quiet, invisible, efficient, the model of military discipline. While I worked, I imagined that email traveling through fiber optic cables, bouncing off satellites, landing in a Chicago server. I imagined the invisible thread tightening around Diana's neck. She wanted disruption. I was about to give her some. At noon, while everyone else grabbed overpriced salads or hit the corporate gym to burn off their anxieties, I stayed at my desk, unwrapped a turkey sandwich from home, white bread, yellow mustard, nothing fancy, and dialed a number I hadn't called in months. Patent and Trademark Office, this is Vincent. Vincent was 68, a retired patent examiner who now consulted for people who could afford his rates, or in my case, people who brought him homemade cookies every Christmas for a decade. He was the oracle of IP law, the guy who'd been there when the rules were written. Vincent, it's Aaron. Aaron, finally ready to quit that circus and work for civilized people? Not yet. I have a hypothetical for you. Love hypotheticals. Usually means someone screwed up big. I laid out the scenario. Employee creates patentable asset during off hours. Files personally. Company lists asset in commercial contract but never executes assignment. Employee contract had IP sunset clause that expired during corporate restructuring. Silence on the line. I could hear Vincent lighting a cigarette, one of the few people who still smoked indoors and didn't care what anyone thought about it. The 2019 restructuring? Vincent wheezed. When they dissolved the LLC and reformed as an S-Corp? That's the one. Aaron, he coughed, laughed, a sound like gravel in a cement mixer. If they didn't get assignment signed before entity dissolution, that IP doesn't belong to the new S-Corp. It belongs to the ghost of the old LLC. Since the LLC's dead, it defaults to creator. Watertight? Bank vault, kid. Without that signature, they're selling a car they don't own the title to. If they execute a deal based on that IP, it's fraud. Federal fraud. You know what happens to corporate officers who commit federal fraud? I did. Orange jumpsuits and concrete rooms. The kind of place where Harvard MBAs don't do well. Why do you ask? Just checking tire pressure, I said, using Diana's words. Give 'em hell, Aaron. I hung up. Confirmation. The weapon was loaded. Safety off. Target acquired. 10 minutes later, my desk phone rang. Patrick from Sterling. Right on schedule. Aaron, got your email. I'm looking at our due diligence files right now. You're asking about patent 7845? Right, I said, typing loudly to sound busy and distracted. Diana mentioned the Apex rollout is totally dependent on it. Just wanted cross-reference numbers to match our internal database after the migration. Aaron, Patrick's voice got tight. I'm looking at the file. I see the patent grant. I see technical specs, but the chain of title folder is empty. That's odd. Maybe misfiled during the server upgrade. I'm checking USPTO public database now. Frantic typing on Patrick's end, like machine gun fire. Jesus Christ, Aaron. It lists owner as you. Aaron Mitchell, individually. Does NexGen have assignment documents? I feigned, surprise, put just the right amount of confusion in my voice. Well, that was original filing. Surely there's assignment paperwork somewhere. I mean, we're about to sign a $280 million deal. Legal wouldn't have missed something that fundamental. Aaron, Patrick's voice dropped to a whisper. If there's no assignment, Sterling can't proceed. Our risk protocol strictly forbids integrating third-party IP without full ownership transfer and indemnification. If this tech belongs to an individual, my God, does Diana know? She's very confident. Told me explicitly not to worry about details. Said the IP is locked down tight as a drum. She's either lying or she's an idiot. She's very visionary, I offered helpfully. Always talking about paradigm shifts and breaking through legacy constraints. I need to flag this immediately, Patrick said. I'm putting a hold on the entire payment schedule until this is resolved. Aaron, if this isn't cleared up before signature, the board will crucify us for due diligence failure. We're talking about my job here. Understand completely, Patrick. You have to protect your company. That's exactly what I'd do in your position. I hung up the phone, took a sip of lukewarm coffee. The fuse was lit, and it was burning toward a powder keg. The beautiful thing about corporate bureaucracy is its predictability. Patrick's inquiry would work its way through Sterling's legal department like a virus through a computer network. They'd demand documentation. NexGen's legal team would get the request, panic, and start searching. They wouldn't find anything because there was nothing to find. Then they'd call Roger. Roger would call Diana. Diana would blame IT, blame legal, blame anyone except herself. But eventually, they'd have to face the truth. They'd built a $280 million house of cards on a foundation that belonged to someone else. I checked the time. 1:30 p.m. Opened email and submitted a personal day request for tomorrow. Reason? Stress management. I wouldn't be here when the bomb went off. Wanted them to sit in the rubble alone. Spent the rest of the afternoon doing exactly what they paid me for. Organized files, updated compliance logs, responded to routine emails with military precision. I was a ghost haunting a machine I'd already sabotaged. Around 3 p.m., I saw Diana strutting past my section, laughing into her headset, probably talking to a headhunter about how she was revolutionizing fintech. Didn't even glance at me. To her, I was furniture. A copy machine that occasionally jammed and needed percussive maintenance. She had no idea the furniture had just canceled her golden parachute. The junior VPs who'd chuckled during the meeting were now avoiding eye contact. Karen from marketing actually stopped by my cube, first time in months, and apologized, said she didn't know what Diana was planning. Even Mrs. Rodriguez from the cafeteria shook her head when she heard, 15 years, mijo. Terrible thing. Word travels fast in corporate buildings. Faster than light, slower than gossip. Packed my bag at 5 p.m. sharp. Personal notebook, favorite pen. Left company laptop on the desk, badge next to the keyboard. Night, Aaron. Wayne, the security guard said as I swiped out. Night, Wayne. Think it'll be quiet tonight. Hope so. It wouldn't be. I woke up at 7 a.m. naturally, no alarm. Arizona sun actually shining for once, filtering through my condo blinds. Quiet. No buzzing fluorescents. No chatter about deliverables and actionable insights. My phone was face down on the kitchen counter. Had put it on Do Not Disturb except for family emergencies. But I could feel it vibrating. Not constant, rhythmic, desperate pulse of too many notifications. Like a submarine sonar pinging frantically in enemy waters. I made coffee. Good coffee. French press, not break room sludge. Sat on my balcony watching Phoenix wake up. Desert air tasted clean, honest. No artificial vanilla from those awful conference room air fresheners. At 8:30, back at the office, morning stand-up would be starting. Diana loved stand-ups, made everyone stand in a circle stating power goals for the day, infantilizing ritual designed to make grown professionals feel like summer camp counselors. I imagined the scene. Diana throwing around buzzwords like confetti, grinning at her own cleverness, looking for applause from her audience of hostages. Then the interruption. Flipped my phone over. Screen was a wall of notifications. 5 missed calls from Roger, 3 from HR, 12 emails marked urgent, high priority. Text from Linda in accounting. What's happening? Legal running around like their hair's on fire. Text from Wayne. Diana screaming at printer. Thought you should know. I smiled. Patrick's inquiry must have hit legal's inbox like a cruise missile. Opened Roger's first email. Urgent IP documentation, 7845. We have query from Sterling regarding assignment papers. Need you to pull physical file immediately. Top priority. Scrolled up to see the progression. Second email. Where are you? Crisis situation. Personal day denied. Get in here now. Then text from Diana. Just call me. No please. No explanation. Just a command. Same tone she'd use ordering coffee. I wasn't calling. Not yet. Imagined the frantic search. Paralegals tearing through filing cabinets like archaeologists looking for lost civilization. IT guys searching servers with the desperation of bomb disposal experts. They'd find the patent filing, find my name, then look for transfer documents. Digital archive, file not found. Physical storage, file not found. Merger documents, clause invalid. By 10 a.m. realization would set in. Not panic yet, confusion. Surely just misplaced. They'd say, surely we didn't build a $280 million strategy on code we don't own. Surely Aaron is wrong about the technicalities. Surely legal has backup documentation somewhere, but surely isn't a legal defense. At 11:30, doorbell rang. Courier from Sterling Legal, priority package requiring signature. Patrick was fast. Wasn't just flagging risk, he was locking down the entire operation. Thick envelope. Not a lawsuit. Notice of contractual suspension. Dear Mr. Mitchell, pursuant to due diligence audit regarding pending partnership between Sterling Financial and NexGen Dynamics, we have identified you as sole legal owner of patent 7845. As we have no record of licensing agreement between yourself and NexGen, we hereby notify you that all integration of Apex validation system involving your intellectual property has been halted effective immediately. We remain prepared to discuss direct licensing should you wish to negotiate independently. Sincerely, Sterling Legal Department. I laughed. Genuine belly laugh that echoed through my empty condo. They'd bypassed NexGen entirely. Sterling knew a sinking ship when they saw one. They were reaching out to the captain of the lifeboat, ready to cut a new deal. Phone buzzed. Voicemail from Roger, voice cracking like a teenager. Aaron, pick up the damn phone. Sterling just froze all accounts. They sent a cease and desist claiming you own the tech. What the hell is going on? Diana's saying you sabotaged the database. Need you here immediately. Sabotage. Of course Diana would call it that. Couldn't conceive that her failure was her own fault. In her world, someone else was always to blame. I opened my laptop, drafted reply to Patrick. Received and understood. Opened a conversation. But first, need to resolve internal matters with current employer. Please maintain freeze until further notice. Then finally replied to Roger. Simple text. On scheduled personal day. Will be in tomorrow 9 a.m. If you'd like to discuss acquisition of my personal intellectual property, have meeting room ready. Suggest legal counsel present. You're going to need them. Hit send. The lock was complete, and I was the only one with the key. Walking into the lobby next morning, silence was heavy enough to bruise. Usually there's corporate symphony, phones ringing, conversations about weekend plans, espresso machine hissing. Today felt like a funeral home. Kelly, the receptionist, looked pale as desert sand, saw me and immediately whispered into her phone like she was calling in air support. Swiped my badge. Still active. They weren't stupid enough to lock me out before understanding the full scope of their problem. Elevator to 4th floor. Doors opened to cluster of suits in the hallway staring at tablets like they contained nuclear launch codes, everyone talking in hushed, urgent whispers. Diana was there, looked like she'd slept in her car. Tie loosened, makeup smeared, dark circles that no amount of concealer could hide, pacing like a caged animal, gesturing wildly at Gary Henderson, our general counsel, who looked like he wanted to crawl under his desk and hide. It's a database error, Diana was saying, voice rising toward hysteria. Some kind of clerical glitch. He's compliance, not engineering. Didn't invent anything, just filed routine paperwork. Paperwork says he's inventor. Henderson snapped. Paperwork says we don't own it. Sterling isn't freezing $280 million over database glitches. Then fix the paperwork. I can't fix what doesn't exist, Diana. I stepped off the elevator. Sound of my shoes on marble cut through their argument like a blade. Click, click, click. They all turned. Diana's eyes went wide with something between rage and terror. For a second, I thought she might actually lunge at me. But then she saw my face. I wasn't smiling. Wasn't scowling, completely neutral. The face of an auditor, of inevitability, of Judgment Day. Aaron, Roger said, stepping from his office looking 10 years older than Tuesday. My office. Now. Morning, Roger. Coffee available? Haven't had my second cup. This isn't a social call, Diana spat, stepping toward me. Think this is funny? Holding the company hostage over some filing error? I stopped, looked at her. Didn't raise my voice, lowered it to submarine quiet. It's not a filing error, Diana. It's the law. Remember details? You told me to table them. Well, the table's full and you're being served. Diana's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping on a dock. I walked past her into the boardroom, same room where Tuesday she'd stripped my bonus. Roger followed, Henderson followed. Diana scrambled in last, looking like a cornered rat. We sat down. The dynamic had completely shifted. I took the head of the table, didn't ask permission. This was my meeting now. Roger was the first to speak, rubbing his temples where a migraine was building. Aaron, you've made your point. You have leverage. We need rights to 7845 assigned to unlock the Sterling deal. What's your price? It's not a flat fee, Roger. We're discussing a licensing agreement. Licensing? Henderson squeaked. Aaron, we need full buyout. Sterling wants clear title. Sterling wants the tech to work legally. They don't care if you own it or license it, long as the chain of custody is valid. I'm willing to grant exclusive perpetual license for Apex validation use, but I retain underlying IP ownership. I open my notebook. Terms. First, retroactive royalty for using my IP the past 2 years. Based on beta revenue and Sterling projections, that's $200,000. Diana choked on air. 200,000? You're out of your mind. That's the friends and family discount. If I take it to market, valuation goes much higher. Second, going forward royalty of 2% gross revenue on all Apex-generated income. 2% of gross? Roger stood up like he'd been electrocuted. That's millions over the contract lifetime. Then don't agree. I'm happy selling to Sterling directly. They offered very generous consulting terms this morning. Made to stand. Roger's hand slammed the table. Sit down, please. I sat. Third, formal written apology from both of you acknowledging that deal delays were due to executive oversight ignoring compliance warnings. Filed with HR, sent to board of directors. Not signing that, Diana said, face purple. That's career suicide. Your career's already on life support, Diana. I'm deciding whether to pull the plug. Turned to Roger. If she doesn't sign, no deal. IP stays with me. Sterling walks. You explained to shareholders why you lost $280 million to save the ego of someone who's been here 8 months. Roger looked at Diana with the cold calculation of a man doing triage. She'll sign. Finally, I said, getting to my favorite part. I want my title changed. No longer Senior Regulatory Affairs Director. I want to be External Consultant, IP Strategy, work remotely, set my own hours, report directly to board, not to Innovation Director. Want to be consultant while still employed? Henderson asked. No. I'm resigning today. The license agreement will be between the company and my new LLC, Mitchell Compliance Solutions. NexGen will be my first client. Retainer equals my current salary plus royalties. Room went silent. They were processing it. I was quitting, but they couldn't get rid of me. Firing them as bosses, rehiring them as customers. If we agree to these terms, Henderson said slowly, you sign the license immediately? We can send it to Sterling by noon? The moment the wire transfer hits my account and both apologies are signed. Roger slumped in his chair, looked at the whiteboard where Diana's growth strategy was still mapped out in red marker. It looked like finger painting now. Do it, Roger whispered. Draw up the papers, Gary. But Roger, Diana started. I said, do it. Diana, get out of my sight before I call security. Diana stood up, looked at me with pure hatred, but underneath it was fear. She knew she'd lost everything. She picked up her designer notepad and shuffled toward the door. No strutting this time, no confidence, just defeat. I'll wait here while you draft the agreement, I told Henderson. Make sure you use the standard template. I'd hate to have to correct your work again. 3 hours later, I walked out of that building for the last time as an employee. But I wasn't really leaving, I was just changing the nature of our relationship. They'd begged, they'd folded, and I hadn't even raised my voice. 6 months later, at the Southwest Tech Summit in Vegas, I was the keynote speaker. Panel titled, The Invisible Asset, Why IP Compliance is Your Most Dangerous Liability. During the mixer afterward, I spotted them by the buffet, Roger and Diana. They looked diminished, defeated. When they saw me across the room, they actually turned and walked the other way. I raised my glass of sparkling water in their direction. A small salute. Compliance isn't the enemy, Diana. Arrogance is. And I was the auditor who came to collect the debt.